Good afternoon. My name is Leke Awoyinka. I'm the co-founder of the Lagos Music Conference. I'd like to thank Ben and the IMS team for having us here this morning or afternoon to speak about opportunities in Africa. I'm going to start off with the intro, and then Jenny Tan, my co-founder, will take it on from there. Africa is the last market to be developed by electronic music culture. We have the fastest growing youth population on the whole planet, and we're home to 6 of the 10 fastest growing economies in the world. Explorers are people with vision, intrepid and at times foolhardy where they rush into, both a focus on breaking new grounds with new initiatives. We all hear of there being opportunities in new emerging markets, such as Africa, India, but the logic would be not to rush in blindly, but instead to form strategic partnerships with local developers who understand the region, and we can provide localized solutions for a global culture. The sonic landscape of African music over the last 10 years has changed dramatically. With an increase in access to the internet, laptops, mobile devices, and music software, the barrier to entry for aspiring artists has been lowered significantly. Of course, the gatekeepers still remain, but the homegrown superstars are now touring far across Africa and afield across the globe. There's a hunger across the continent for more collaboration, for more innovation, and for more consumption. However, it's not all just good news. For Africa to become one of the biggest music markets, we need to create a fully functioning music industry. We need to get the basics right. We need to start creating a solid Pan-African infrastructure that allows for growth within the parameters of a global music culture. That's where the Lagos Music Conference comes in. This will be the first time the Pan-African industry will engage on a platform focused on the development of a solid music infrastructure where the global music culture can plug into. It all starts with a mindset, ambition, the right team, and finding the right partners. At this point, I'd like to invite my co-founder, Jenny Tan, to take us into the next chapter and break down further specifics of the sub-Saharan landscape. Thank you very much.
Good morning, or good afternoon. It's actually a quite special moment for me because I have been an evangelist about Africa and electronic music in Africa and Nigeria for the past 10 years almost. And standing here today is finally letting everybody off the hook. At least Ben, who 5 years ago, I told him in an after hour, I told him about Nigerian music industry and about electronic music in Africa, and he was like, yeah. And now 5 years later, we actually are here and speaking about it, so it is real. Now, are there any Africans in the audience here? Yes, ooh. 2, amazing. The South African contingent who's coming after is obviously in the green room. Essentially, we wanted to actually also thank South Africa for putting Africa on the map for electronic music, because if it hadn't been for them, we wouldn't be here today. Now, we are speaking about Africa in the next chapter, but to be fair, like a classic Nigerian scam, we are going to go pretty Nigerian after a couple of slides. We're going to talk about Nigeria a bit more, because we were told that we should leave South Africa out entirely, since the South Africans are coming on right after. And to be fair, yeah, there's Kenya and there's Ghana, but Nigeria is really the biggest market in Africa, so next to South Africa in terms of the music industry, it would definitely be the most interesting. And then, of course, we're speaking about the Lagos Music Conference. Now, in terms of facts, we don't have a lot of time, so you're going to have to do your own math. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you all the facts, and then you're going to draw your own conclusions, because you're here from all different fields, you know, from the tech industry, from digital music sales, from the event industry, and so on. So, you know, we're not going to do your analysis in that much time. Then also, a lot of you know, we're going to discuss a lot of challenges or a lot of peculiarities of the market, and then considering that it's an African context, yeah, you could see it as challenges, but you could also see it as opportunities, so I really leave that up to you now. to see how you want to take it. Now, there's far too much information to fit into 10 minutes, so if we don't get through everything, just come and find me with the red pants later, and then we can, or Leke with the red hat, and we can clarify a couple of more things. Now, generally speaking, data is really scarce in Africa and in Nigeria, so unfortunately, I'm not going to be throwing a lot of Nielsen data around with smartphone penetration and this and that, because quite frankly, they're all really estimates only. But anyway, let's get cracking. Now, number one, we have the total African population, 1.2 billion. However, we are only really going to speak about sub-Saharan Africa. So there we're looking about 1 billion people. Now, the smartphone penetration is around 15%, which is massive for now, because about 5 years ago, we were looking at, more like 3-4%. And obviously, anything music industry related has very much to do with data and smartphones. Now, between 15 and 29 years of age, we have 271 million people. Compare that to the 88 million we have in the European Union in the same age group. Now, in Nigeria, see, very cheeky, only one slide really about Africa. So we have 181 million people. Out of which 49 million are between 15 and 29, and our smartphone penetration is 27%. Now, obviously, in terms of Nigerian music, whatever you would know Fela. Everybody knows Fela. But beyond that, you may have missed quite a bit on what's been happening over the last 10 years, let's say. Now. Back in the days, up until the 90s, there was a lot of international influence from the major labels, but then at one point they pulled out because of piracy, and at the same time, music technology became a lot cheaper, and the Nigerians, being such a big market, decided that, well, we've got a lot of local talent, so let's just develop that. So the Nigerian music industry is it's like its own universe in a way. That is not for electronic music, but that is just, for popular music. Then there is a serious lack of DJ culture because, the equipment was just too expensive. So the latest developments now are definitely making a big difference in terms of technology. So now that the DJ controllers are somewhere around $270, I think, versus the $4,000 for two CDJs, so that's definitely going to make a big difference. In terms of genres, we're looking at Afropop. And we have our two biggest Nigerian stars that won the BET Awards. So we have Ice Prince on the left and Davido on the right. Now, in terms of industry characteristics, Nigeria doesn't really have bands, so it's all about single performers, and there's a serious lack of subcultures. So the music diversity is relatively limited. Now, the barriers to entry are relatively high because it's all about shooting the biggest music video, and payola is what we call paying off the media. So you have to pay off the media as opposed to royalties being paid to the artist. Essentially, you're paying the radios to play your music, and you're paying the TV stations to pay your music videos, and you're paying the media to write about you. So it's a bit, so that there's quite high barriers to entry in that respect. And then in terms of shows, there's certainly a lack of shows, but we're going to get to that later. Now, in terms of Nigerian labels, record labels, basically the moment you get signed to a record label, the record label is supposed to take over everything. So they pay your school fees, they pay your rent, they pay your parents' rent, they pay everybody's rent. So the record labels are essentially taking on somewhat of an economic development role almost. However, that also means that artist development is coming relatively short because the labels are trying to monetize their talent relatively quickly. Then there's label exclusivity, so you don't, if you're assigned to one label, you certainly don't produce for any, or it gets released on any other label. And the artists do sign away their life a little bit because you sign, it's very common to sign contracts of 5 years where it's up to the label to then renew for another 5 years, and a lot of times artists are stuck for a while. In terms of Nigerian artists, so in terms of genre diversity, we have Afropop, hip-hop, but the Nigerian or the African version, let's say, of hip-hop, reggae dancehall, which has nothing to do with dance music, by the way, and Afro Juju. And then it's really only the top 30 artists that pull a crowd. Otherwise, the lineups were relatively repetitive. And the biggest deal ever for Nigerian artists is to get Twitter verification. And Vivo. I don't know if that's the same around the world, but on our end, that was the BET award for Davido was not as big as his Twitter verification. Then, in terms of DJ culture, well, given the fact that there's no real music diversity or not that much yet, and you hear the same music played on the radio as as you're going to work, as you hear it wherever you go, plus in the clubs and whatnot. So clearly, people don't go out for the music. So this is a massive difference to electronic dance music culture, because that's what we go out for. Yeah, sure, there's plenty of other reasons, but essentially it's about experiencing whatever that particular the DJ or live performer has to offer. Now, DJs are really more support acts for the headliners, so they're in the back, like changing track from one to the other. In clubs, the DJ booths, a lot of time you would find them next to the bathroom. Or, like on the second floor around the corner and whatnot. And, you might as well just put on a CD. We really didn't ever understand why in some clubs there would even be a DJ. But, and then CDJs, well, it's all about, obviously there's no, well, not obviously, but there is no vinyl culture, or there was no vinyl culture, or history, so it's all CDJs are fully digital. Most Nigerian DJs are not very good beat matchers either. Then it's very Serato dominated, no Tractor ever, and Jimmy Jat, who is the biggest Nigerian DJ from back in the 80s, 90s, he does an annual presentation, an annual event called Jimmy's Jump Off, and has only ever, with massive promotion, only ever pulled around 800 people. So there is definitely a lack of DJ culture that we could key into with electronic dance music. Now, in terms of club culture, given that it's all about radio music, so you don't really have that element of surprise, and Nigerians don't really go out for the music as of today. Then also, there are no covers at the entrance, so there aren't really promoters, because clearly, you can't really rely on the club sharing the bar revenue with you, as you know. It's like whatever they give you as a number, and then also there's no real music philosophy in the clubs, so the clubs don't really differentiate themselves, and within a very short time they come and then rebrand and then shut down again and rebrand and whatnot, but nothing really changes. And then it's very much about bottle service. Now then, obviously, we're really running out of time, so let me do this really quickly. So in terms of the crowd, the great thing about Nigerians is that they love everything new. So when we started putting electronic music a little bit more out there with a couple of underground parties that we had last year, Nigerians caught up really quickly, and everybody was really excited. So there's definitely that element of bringing something new that would get them excited. Now, in terms of music consumption, it's big. Music consumption mainly happens on the radio, then also CDs, because, however, legal CDs don't exist. It is all about piracy, but, in the absence of a functioning CD market, you may as well argue that the pirates are the real, physical distributors, so to speak, because the artists and the labels actually make deals with them directly. Then in terms of illegal downloads, well, it is almost all illegal, simply because there's hardly any legal alternative even to the downloads. And the labels and the artists put the music on these sites for illegal downloads, so it's a bit ironic. Then we do have a digital sales digital music sales outlet called Spinlet. They plowed around $20 million into that over the last 4 years and haven't really broken even or gotten anywhere. So we're yet to see how that's going to pan out. Then in terms of downloads versus streaming, data costs are still relatively high. So streaming hasn't really kicked off yet, and especially if you work in an industry or in a market where it's all about the top 30 radio hits, then if you want to play those over and over and over and over for months on end, then you might as well just download them instead of stream them. So that's kind of the mentality for now. And then the idea of not really being into music discovery as of today. Why should I pay $9.99 on a monthly basis to have access to millions of tracks that I'm not interested in, right? So, and SoundCloud is still relatively recent. Now, in terms of the promoters, you take 150% of what your cost is, and then at the end you keep 70%. So if you do the math, you're kind of short, right? And then you still kind of make it work, but then you don't really care about who's coming to the event, so that has been a bit of an issue with respect to the event industry in Nigeria. Then there's no grassroots promoter culture simply because the headliners are all very, very expensive, and there's no alternative like like a DJ, like what happened in the DJ culture. And then the simple fact that you don't have cover at the nightclubs means that you don't really have promoters. And so who are the real promoters then? It's the beer company and the mobile networks, because they have the money, right? So let's jump to endorsements quickly. So 80% of the music industry, our revenues are all about endorsements. It's pretty insignificant numbers, maybe on a global scale. $5 million is really nothing, but given that over the last 2 years it has actually increased, it has actually doubled, and that's mainly the telcos and the spirits. However, it does kill the performance opportunities. So sometimes you have a situation where one mobile network sponsors, like we had an example where Mary J. Blige came, and then one of the biggest pop stars was supposed to perform with her, but then it was sponsored by the wrong brand. She was signed by somebody else, and so it all didn't work out. So unfortunately, we have a bit of that situation. Anyway, let me jump to things that are critical, since we're kind of out of time. How much time do we still have? Sorry, we started late. Okay, right, so at which point then, this would be the time that I say we don't have enough time, and you come and find me after. So let me just jump very quickly. Oops. Okay, let me jump very quickly then to the actual Lagos Music Conference then. I wish we had had a bit more time, but now, electronic music, which you're all interested in, let me almost close with that. Thank God for Swedish House Mafia in 2012 for Don't You Worry Child, otherwise EDM would have never reached Nigerian shores, I think. So that was the beginning. Then SA came, is pushing a little bit in right now. We are starting a radio show now to start pushing electronic music a bit more out there, because radio really is the only way of getting the music heard. And we are also working on a project with getting local producers hooked up with Ableton and see what's going to come out with once they use the program and have an opportunity to perform live, what's going to come out of that, and what kind of like organic new sound is going to come out of that. So we're working on that. And then of course the Lagos Music Conference is where we're going to get into the engagement of the industry. So we have the Lagos Music Conference coming up on November 19 to 21. They're at www.lagosmusicconference.com. So if you want to check out what we have coming up, we're going to talk about a lot of the issues, and obviously all the opportunities in the Nigerian and African music industry. And what makes the conference amazing is it will be the first time that we're actually having a Pan-African professional event for the music industry, because the South Africans are doing a good job, but they're kind of always keeping to themselves. It's not that they are not allowing us to buy tickets, but it's not like we're being invited. So we're actually reaching out and we're saying, okay, Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, everybody who's there, let's all come together. Let's actually talk about the issues at hand, as Leke mentioned earlier, and look at the creative infrastructure that still needs to happen. And that's it.
Thank you.